When you talk to customers, how are they thinking about their risk assessments with all this AI adoption? So more and more businesses are using AI models in their products. What are you seeing there?
A lot of what we see is, I think the universe is cooling. By that, I mean, the big enterprises have concerns about how their data is used or how these products might work. The software vendors and people building with AI want to satisfy those concerns, but no one quite knows exactly like the magical incantation to say to, either ask for or provide a bunch of certainty. And so in that, we're starting to see some of the standards bodies create new regulations, NIST AI RMF in the US, ISO 42001. And I think more of these will gain traction over time as we just kind of figure out how to talk about some of this stuff. But again, right now we don't quite have all the words. And so the conversations can be a little bit longer, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much for coming on, Christina and Iccha. Really appreciate you coming on today. Vanta is an incredible company, created and defined the automated security and compliance category. We're going to talk a lot today about how AI has become part of Vanta's story. But before we get into any of that, would love to get to know you two a little bit. Christina, you have this amazing story. You led a very curious life that led you from Ohio to following your love of technology to Stanford, from a venture role at USV to teaching yourself to code, from product management at Dropbox to founding Vanta. So you got a lot done. I heard that early on this wild path, you were flipping Beanie Babies when you were 11 as a young entrepreneur. As a former Beanie Baby lover, I'm just curious what caused you to do that. What compelled you as a kid to start flipping Beanie Babies?
I think it was the puzzle of it, or I think it was a puzzle bit. And honestly, I think it was having only an allowance that was $5 and wanting to have things that cost more than $20 a month, maybe my $5 a week allowance, which I'm very grateful to have, but I think wanted a bit more. And there were Beanie Babies all around.
Constraints make you creative. We see this in venture too.
Yes. But I think also it was this puzzle to figure out on the internet. And this was early eBay. And there were people who were doing this and it seemed to be working for them. And so it's okay, this is possible. Can I figure out how to do this? And the answer was kind of, or I did the things. I don't think I made any money. Might have even lost some allowance money, but it was fun.
But for the love of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite Beanie Baby? Do you remember?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I was really into the camel. It was an older retired one. His name was Humphrey. I didn't have him. He was, I think, $1,200 at the time. So I did not have him. And then about 10 years ago, I walked into a thrift store and I found him and I bought him. It was totally random. But it was very sweet. Actually on the shelf behind me.
Full circle. Okay, great. So Humphrey's on the podcast too. Yeah, mine was Hope the Bear. I remember I had 4 Hope the Bears. So I love that. But you were a very young entrepreneur, we'll call it. At some point in time, you believed that you needed to be Zuckerberg coding since you were 6 to start a company. I'm curious when you changed your mind about that and specifically when you decided to build Vanta.
Yeah, longer process, but I think the short version was actually working at Union Square Ventures, which is an early stage venture capital firm in New York, and really luckily to get that job. And a lot of what that job was meeting people who were starting companies, probably 10 a week kind of on average. And so over the course of 2 years, you just meet a lot of founders and would-be founders and see there's lots of ways to do it. And I think that was really helpful because you saw the people who'd been coding since 6 and you saw the people who hadn't been. And, you saw different, just all sorts of people and all sorts of different ways to make it kind of be successful or make it work for them. And so I think it was something over those 2 years where it was really helpful. And then, at that moment it was oh, okay, maybe if I, work really hard and, do things and get lucky, I could start a company. And then Vanta itself was, not quite 10 years after, but 5 or 6 years after that, the idea in particular.
Why was Vanta the company that you decided to build? How would you describe what Vanta does?
Yeah, so Vanta, we're a trust management platform. We help companies build out and understand and improve their security, and then go get credit for all that security work with their customers through compliance certifications like SOC 2 or ISO 27001, through security questionnaires, through trust centers. So sort of this dual mandate of helping companies understand and improve their security and then use that to grow their business.
Why start that company?
It's definitely a puzzle part. So you mentioned, but prior to Vanta, I was a product manager at Dropbox. I was working on a new product at the time, Dropbox Paper, and did not know it needed to be compliant or kind of secure per customer contracts until we were about to launch, and the legal team walked over and asked me what the heck I was doing, launching and violating these contracts. And so that was sort of the beginning of when I first learned about this world. And I think I was struck that it was clearly really valuable, right? It was the only way to get to, this new product out. We had to get to customers. And yet it was going to take us a year of engineering time to get the product to market. And so here was this like really valuable thing we needed for product market fit. We needed to like make Dropbox successful. But there was like a year of manual work that kind of only the engineers could do between it. And that just felt strange, for lack of another word.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you're like, why slow down? We want to bring this product to market. We want to bring something into the world, but we just can't do it because we need to check this box that is really hard to actually check. I love it. So, Iccha, you've been in engineering leadership at a slew of impressive companies, and you joined Vanta about a year ago as the VP of engineering. What compelled you to join the company?
Yeah, two things were like really important for me when I was looking for my next company. One was like a company solving like a really important problem. So like having solid product market fit. And the second was, having solid leadership at the company. So the first one about like the product market fit, like Christina's telling about her Dropbox journey. Like I've done the whole get SOC 2 at, my previous company. When GDPR came out, I was like one of the engineers sitting with a room full of lawyers trying to figure out what to do with my product.
I've been there too. It's very painful.
I know. Yeah. And when, I heard about Vanta and them, taking a very modern approach, an automated approach to solving this problem space, I'm like, okay, this is a real problem. I know it's painful. I know it takes a lot of work to go solve. And so there's something here that Vanta is onto. So that was important. And second, having worked at different places, I know it's important to have a solid leadership team who are smart, no BS, all on board to roll up their sleeves and solve this problem together. And I saw that at Vanta and in Christina. And so I was like, yes, this is where I want to go next. Yeah.
I love it. So one of the bets that you made as a leadership team was to lean in pretty early into AI. So Christina, I saw that you launched Vanta AI October 2023. What was the moment that either you or Vanta as an org became interested in incorporating AI and LLMs as part of the product?
Yeah, I think different places, the company kind of earlier. And I think for me, and I was probably a little bit of a slow adapter, but for me, it was probably GPT 3.5's launch. So kind of a year prior. And that was like a model that really, I think, caught a lot of people's attention, mine included. And you just started to see the possibility. And kind of the way I think about it now is a lot of these models and LLMs let you build product experiences that are like really magical and we couldn't build before. And we had the idea to build some of them before and we tried in some cases, but it like didn't quite work. And I think 3.5 was the kind of first time for me personally where you could start to see like, oh, this isn't quite there, but this is so much closer than everything else has been. I know, Iccha, you probably have another different earlier take.
Yeah, actually, I'm curious, Iccha, when you took the role, how much of it you thought would be AI-centric?
It's such a funny story. Like, AI was just popping up and everyone was like, is this the next crypto? Like, is this just gonna like blow up? And I had some background in ML, like back in grad school. My thesis was multi-document summarization using probabilistic mathematical models.
That's very relevant.
Yes, which is basically like LLMs are like a step leap from there, And so I was more bullish on like, okay, AI is not like another crypto. There's like more to it. And I know Vanta was an early adopter, which is like a positive sign. I was looking for, a space where we are willing to try new technologies. But it kind of surpassed my expectations, to be honest. The rate of innovation in the space has been quicker than what I expected. And I knew it would be a part of my job, but like I did not really realize how much more part of my job it will be. And honestly, I'm actually glad. It's very fun and exciting to be a part of this wave in the industry.
I think that's true of a lot of engineering orgs. As the models get better and as you see, like, you have real products out there that people are using, and so you invest more team and more time into it. It would actually be helpful, Christina, could you just walk me through the parts of Vanta today that do use AI? How is it part of the product?
For sure. And Iccha, you should jump in on stuff I forget. But one of the first places we launched it, kind of to the point about you can now build experiences you wanted to but couldn't in the past, was we launched a questionnaire automation product. So one part of enterprise software often is if you're selling a tool to someone else, going through their security review. And often that security review starts with a long list of questions that might be in a spreadsheet. You know, do you encrypt data at rest? How do you do that? What do you do with data in transit? Like times 100 questions. Generally, no one really
And
likes
times
filling
many
those out.
customers.
Yeah, you like it's one of those things where you want to get it right, but it's pretty tedious. And yeah, you don't think there's much room for error. And so folks have tried to answer these questions kind of automatically before. And yeah, we're like, there was the BERT models from Google in like 2020. But nothing was like really that good. Where I think users would have to like fight with these models. And so it wasn't clear if it's actually you'd saved any time. And so when these things started to get good, this was one of the first obvious places to apply the technology, because Vanta knows so much about the company setup and its policies, and you can take the old questionnaires and so go and give a rough draft answer for someone who can then go through and say, yep, I agree, I disagree, I want to fix that. Anyway, that was the very first product we launched just over a year ago. And we've seen kind of great uptick on that, both from an end user perspective and it's a nice kind of place to measure accuracy and quality too, because you have these discrete question answer pairs.
Yeah, and it sounds like in that case, you actually have someone on the end saying, this is a good answer, this is not a good answer.
Exactly. Yeah. And, Iccha can talk more to this, but like how she's kind of instrumented that, and we track those metrics and like have that and, kind of think about, well, how do they fluctuate based on different types of users, different types of data, different models, right? Like there's kind of a bunch there. But that was one of the first places. Over time, we've just been pulling it into more and more parts of the product. So a lot of a compliance or a GRC workflow is kind of literally mapping different pieces of information together. So you have this kind of policy document. It's sort of like legalese. Here's, how we think about information security or cryptography. And you have those documents, and then you want to make sure you're actually doing what's in the document. So like that legalese has to match your AWS config, has to match the like control you put in front of an auditor, like the rule you say you follow. So much of a GRC person's workflow is in fact making sure all of these different things are in sync all the time. It's really hard. And so we've like started to apply LLMs to different pieces of this wider problem so that, again, we can kind of flag for someone and say, hey, your document says you're doing XYZ. Your cloud says you're doing ABC. Is that on purpose? Do you want to change one of these?
Yeah, and this makes a lot of sense because LLMs they're good at moving around different structures of data, so you can do that matching much more easily.
Yes.
And we're adding it to more parts of our product. So maybe by the time this comes out, there'll be another AI application, like from vendor risk management to like Christina saying policies to our trust center. So everywhere there's data, there's opportunity to make that data more accessible to our end users. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love it. So, I'm curious on the engineering side, security and compliance are very high stakes fields, and false positives or false negatives can be costly. You had mentioned, Christina, the example where you have humans in the questionnaires checking, before you say this is the truth, you have someone going and checking and saying, yes, like I'm giving a thumbs up here. And so you have a little bit of a safety net there. But how in general does Vanta ensure that AI-driven automation is reliable in these spaces where it's really so important?
Yeah, I think a big part of this is having a human in the loop in the design, right? So AI is here to assist you and make it easier for you and not necessarily to replace you. So intentionally in all our workflows, you will see like, here's a suggestion, and do you want to accept it or do you want to reject it? Or the other aspect of this is we also make sure there's like transparency in wherever any responses are generated by AI. So if you go to our chatbot, for example, in the Trust Center, it says, powered by Vanta AI, AI can sometimes make mistakes, so check your responses. So the end user is educated where like LLMs or AI is at play. And I think the third part of this is explainability, which is, so for example, in the questionnaire automation example, whenever we just, generate a response for you, we also give you references, which is like, hey, this is how we generated this answer for you. We based it off of this like knowledge base that you linked or this document that you
Yeah,
had.
like citations effectively.
Citations, exactly. So that there's more trust built with the user that like, oh, okay, hallucination is not at play, or like, okay, I can go verify the source and even adjust it when I need. So building trust with the end user is like very important in tools like these by providing them that information.
Do you think there'll always need to be that human in the loop?
That's such a good question. I think in high stakes types of activities, yes. I think if you have lower stake automation activities where the stakes are less, that's where agentic workflows can take more of a place. But I feel like, especially in security and compliance, we have a while to go where I think always having a human in the loop will be necessary.
That's super helpful. Tell me a little bit about how you've built up an evaluation system. So you mentioned earlier that you're tracking some of these metrics over time. Maybe for the questionnaire example, how many look good, how many get edited and changed. So what is the eval system that you've built, and what are you measuring?
Sure. So, so we have eval at different phases of building an AI product, right? So there's like the build phase. You have to make sure that you have a really good golden data set or multiple golden data sets, which is basically a canonical representation of what kind of like customer data or input you can get. And then we use prompt engineering tools, like trying out different prompts, evaluating them against these golden data sets. In places, we've built LLM as a judge concept, which is basically you use LLMs to evaluate some of your responses to be like, okay, this is working good, or this tweak that you made is not working good, and using that as a signal. And kind of the most interesting part for me, at least, that I'm pretty proud of what we've built is we've integrated this into the existing engineers' workflows in their CI/CD systems. Like, when I'm coding and I push up code, which, impacts an AI feature, automatically in our CI/CD LLM as a judge runs evaluations against your like different golden data sets to give the engineers a signal that, hey, your AI quality may be dipping or it may be doing better with this change that you made. So this is all like offline eval or like evaluation done without live customer input.
And let me just ask on the golden data set part, can you just tell me a little bit about the construction of that golden data set? Because all those downstream things that you mentioned, like you want to do LLM as judge on your answers, you want to basically do regression testing at CI and know, hey, if I change this prompt, do I break a bunch of evals? But it all kind of hinges on having an actually good golden data set. So how do you do it?
You picked the right question to ask, Barr. Building a golden data set is actually a pretty hard problem because you want to make sure you have representative information and you're constantly keeping it up to date. So we have GRC, which is governance, risk, and compliance SMEs, which are subject matter experts who, are like deep experts in the space of compliance. So they actively work with our engineering team and our product team to build these golden data sets for us. And they're partners along this journey with us. They also help us in things like doing human evaluation sometime to be like, okay, you push this change out in the wild, customers are thumbs down in this, like, okay, this is why. And we go tweak that back in the golden data set. So there's like this whole feedback loop happening. So our SMEs are quite honestly the biggest key to helping us build our golden data sets. Mm-hmm.
And then the SMEs or subject matter experts, is it natural for them to think in this way? They're used to poking holes in pretty challenging security and compliance issues. But of course, when you're dealing with AI and thinking about all the corner cases, it's kind of like non-deterministic unit testing. How do you like train up SMEs or get them in the mindset to build the right data sets?
So we actually embed them with our team. So we have like a SME who's like working closely with our AI team and our AI engineers. So they have like pairing sessions that they do together where like the engineer and the SME are sitting together and the SME is like, okay, this doesn't look right. And the engineer is like, I wonder if I shifted this prompt, it would do better. And they kind of run it together. Does this look better to you, SME? And so they work very closely with each other rather than in isolation. And that way, it's kind of cool for the SMEs. They're learning more about how AI systems work and
Yeah.
sometimes can play around with these prompt tools on their own. Yeah.
So you'd say they're excited about it. They're like, we get
Yes.
to be part of the AI features.
Yes. And their job isn't all day just clicking and doing human
Of course not.
eval. Yeah. So it's a part of their job is helping this team. A part of their job is working in other parts of Vanta's security org. Yeah.
Do you use any external labeling, or is it mostly internal SMEs for creating the data sets?
It's all internal. Mm-hmm.
One thing I am curious about is how much those golden data sets are being updated over time.
Yeah. So I spoke a lot about our offline eval system, but like our online eval, which is basically based on
Perfect. That's my
customer
next
feedback.
question.
Yes. is, there's multiple ways to get customer feedback. Like a lot of people know about the thumbs up, thumbs down, but in real life, not a lot of customers are willing to even give you that extra second to do the
Totally.
thumbs up or thumbs down. It's like a very small percentage. So we're also gathering additional signal like, are they accepting your answer? Are they editing your answer? Are they rejecting your answer? And if they make edits, are they just converting it to like UK English instead of, or American English? And we're getting all this like detailed like feedback loop into our system that a combination of like our product managers, our engineers, our SMEs are looking at to take this feedback and be like, okay, where should we represent this change back in the system? And yes, it plays a feedback loop back into like, should we go update our golden data set? Should we go update our prompts? Or should we like add more features to give customers more control? So that feedback loop is happening continuously.
So the way it would work is there's all this user preference data, and then there's a bit of at this point in time, manual process, taking that user preference data and saying, hey, what should we change in our system, whether it's prompts, whether it's, an evaluation set that covers a corner case we didn't account for, whether it's maybe they need some product guidance. It sounds like it's less in your case, updating the model or fine-tuning it, et cetera, based on these preferences.
Sometimes that is the answer. It differs so much based on the product feature set. There's no like, if anything I've learned is there's no one size fits all. Like new models are always tested. Every time there's like a new Anthropic release or a GPT release, the team is on top of it, measuring if it's increasing our accuracy, what is the speed, is the trade-off acceptable? So that's always happening. And this feedback loop is more about like getting into the more gritty details that like just a pure model update will not solve for you.
If you're constantly using Anthropic, OpenAI APIs and monitoring the changes in these models, I'm just curious if there's something that you want from the models that you're not getting now, or if I were to phrase it differently, if you had a magic wand to improve these APIs, is there something that you would want that you're not getting today?
If only I could get reasoning and speed at the same time.
We're working on it.
I know. And I think, there could be potential ways in which a model self knows when to like reason or not to reason.
Yeah.
Could make it go faster too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I would imagine in your case, for different products in Vanta, the like latency versus reasoning trade-off looks very different. So tell me if I'm wrong in this assumption, but for something like the questionnaire, you don't need to do it in a second and you'd rather have the right answers, but I don't know exactly what those time limits look like.
I mean, you're spot on. Yes. We use different models in different places based on exactly the criteria described. For certain places, accuracy or like certain type of data, certain models do better. And so we plug and play wherever applicable to our customer use case. Mm-hmm.
So we mentioned the evals. This is how you know that you're doing the thing that you want to do. We mentioned the online evaluation, the offline evaluation, and then also kind of like using different models. How are you working with Retrieval today?
Sure. So a lot of our data is uploaded as documents from our customers. So it's either PDFs or docs or Excels. So the first step, honestly, is putting it through some kind of OCR tech that we use a third-party vendor for to convert those and extract those into like text chunks. We did a lot of experimentation on like the right chunking size and all that stuff. And, we kind of landed on semantic variable chunks. So which is basically we allow the provider to like do a plus or minus few characters on the chunk to which is a reasonable point to like cut off. And then we use those chunks and, send them to a provider to get embeddings back, which we basically feed into our index. We use Mongo, we throw it into an index over there. And whenever there's a user query which comes in, we obtain the embeddings for that. We also fetch the embeddings from our index and do some kind of ranking algorithm to re-rank the embeddings and, then do the next parts of the processing.
And just to be clear, like, what is the objective of that retrieval system?
To have a good amount of precision and recall so that we can pass it in as a context into the large language models.
And you mentioned that there were a few steps to get to that semantic variable chunking. So what did you try? And then how did you land on that and know that this was, I assume you're measuring what you just said, but how do you know that that is the optimal result?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we tried fixed chunks. We tried to determine, is our large chunks better? Will sending more context help a model? Are smaller chunks better? Will that help a model? Actually, we had interesting learnings over there about like embeddings prefer different chunk sizes, then LLMs prefer different formats. And we had some like, based on, the data we have. So we came up on like all these different combinations to figure for the best precision and recall for our type of data. This was the best type of chunking mechanism we wanted. So yeah, it was a lot of trial and error in the early days, talking to a lot of other people doing the same things. Christina connected us to like, hey, here are other people trying to solve similar problems.
It makes sense. I think like documents are very rich in terms of how things are related to each other, headers, etc. So it kind of conceptually makes sense, but I don't know until you play around with it. Okay, so what is the biggest technical challenge that you've faced in incorporating AI into Vanta's products?
I think the challenges change every few months. Like, I feel like early last year, my challenge was finding people who have done this before to come be a part of the team. That talent was pretty hard to find. We had lots of awesome engineers in-house who were learning and doing really well, but also trying to find people who have done this before to augment the team. Right now, I think the challenge is actually building good data sets has been a challenge too, because you don't have an open source repository of this type of data that you can just download and go with. So I think that would probably be the current challenge we're tackling. Mm-hmm.
Christina, what have you found to be the biggest challenge, whether technically or just in orienting the organization around embracing AI?
Yeah, I think it kind of hits on a little bit of both, but I think it's been surprising to me, and I have like a much shallower background here than Iccha does, but it's been surprising to me of kind of what works and what doesn't. And I've basically learned like whatever I would have guessed would work or not, like I am just wrong. And so I should like not guess, even just for myself. And I kind of mean that on like what sort of product experiences might be easier or harder to get work. Where is it easier or harder to generate those golden data sets? And then when we use them, there's some use cases around just like basically text matching where like I thought naively and incorrectly would be like very easy, and we're still working through some of them. So there's like sort of something
easy, but the real data is hard.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask if there are other places in the org outside of engineering where you've been adopting a lot of AI too?
A couple. And it's been very neat. There's definitely some parts of our go-to-market organization that are very excited here. And some of it is, like more like narrative writing, ChatGPT sort of stuff. But some of it is we have a couple of people, including like one of our customer success leaders, who has generated a bunch of JavaScript or like Google Apps script and has like automated a bunch of email sending for her team out of like Google Sheets and Google Apps script JavaScript. Right. And this is someone who doesn't know how to code, quote unquote. But she got a thing. She like figured out how to put it in the right spot, read it enough to figure out what she needs to change. Like, it's very cool.
I know that you like basically locked yourself in a room and taught yourself how to code, Christina, but yeah, now it looks very, very different than it
Yeah,
did.
no, and it's awesome. It's great. Yeah, and I think both, like, I'm so glad I spent that time, or I don't regret that at all. I think it is also helpful, like vibe coding, it's both very fun, and then like vibe debugging is not. It's the joke, and so it's like really helpful to be able to look at it, and, like, understand what the code is doing, so you could fix it when it's doing something screwy. But then the flip side is it's like amazing to see again the CS leader who, quote unquote, like if she were here, she'd tell us she can't code. But she can, and she's doing stuff, and she's off to the races, and it's awesome.
So it sounds like people have been excited somewhat on their own too. Like, it's not like you're saying, hey, pay attention to this big wave. Like, we all need to focus. Everyone's really hungry to do that. And Iccha, you mentioned, one of the challenges that you have found is around finding people who kind of like know how to do this already. So you have the excited folks who are adopting AI, but then you also have people who've been working in AI and ML for much longer, even if the tools are new. So what does the engineering team construction look like for AI development at Vanta?
Yeah, sure. So I have a centralized AI team, which is actually a mix of a lot of different skill sets. It's a mix of like true MLE with some applied AI engineers, software engineers, and platform engineers. So they do a mix of building out our AI platform so that, every team doesn't have to resolve the same problem of how do I do prompt testing or how do I eval? And they also build certain AI features. But I view this team as like, any other, hub team, like not all, they do a lot of the work, but not all the work. So my engineers in other product teams are also like learning these tools, adopting these tools, and building AI features. So AI development happens in all parts of the engineering organization and just not the AI team. The AI team is always available to like consult or like embed on certain bigger projects. But just given how much there is to go build, we are educating and empowering our engineers everywhere to like, get on speed with this and like build features.
How do you get the internal team and the teams that are building on top of the features that they build to work together most effectively? Because I'd imagine on the one hand, you need to know what products are we building so that we are building the right AI infrastructure to support them. And then on the other hand, I'd imagine you want to know what AI capabilities do we have so that we can imagine what products to build. So like, how do you kind of marry that chicken and egg problem?
Yeah, so a large part of this, there's multiple parts. So one part of this is bringing our product and design counterparts along on like, hey, this is what AI can do, right? So my AI team has been running multiple workshops within Vanta in the past few months. And these workshops are both for like all the engineers to be like, hey, here are the AI platform features. Let's build a mini feature together. We just did a big workshop at the company kickoff, which helped everyone get familiar with basics of prompt engineering and the eval system. And then they repackaged this workshop and ran it for all of our product and design org too, where all our PMs now know, okay, here's basic prompt engineering for like compliance data and understand that. So education is a big component of like just bringing everyone along. And that just gets the juices flowing of like, oh, what if we did this? And what if we did that? And knowing what's available for them to make that happen.
I've seen you do lean prototyping. So you put out a recent experiment using Anthropic's Claude and the open source MCP, and then Vanta's API to let users ask deeper questions of Vanta's compliance data. How do you balance what we talked about earlier, which is you have these golden data sets, making sure that you have high reliability is super important. False negatives and false positives are costly with fast and rapid experimentation. So I guess, how do you balance it, and what does it take to go from prototype to production?
We highly emphasize an experimentation culture, especially when it comes to AI. We're like, something's new, let's try it out, let's share in our channels. Like our AI channel is like pretty active at like people being like, oh, this came out, I tried this out. So the bar for local experimentation is pretty low. It's not the same as shipping like a high production feature. And funnily, the MCP experiment was done by one of our engineering managers, like on one of the teams. And it wasn't even an engineer. So everyone's experimenting, trying out these new tools. And, even like top down, there is like precedent. Like in one of our company all hands, Christina was talking about using cursor. And, the culture is kind of like there throughout that, okay, let's, be on the cutting edge. But then when it comes to rolling things out to customers, we are also trying to be mindful of like putting up a reasonable quality product out there, starting with, okay, doing basic evaluation, starting with a smaller subset of customers or a limited set of features, getting feedback and being iterative. So for example, we experiment with the MCP server, but now we're doing some due diligence to make it more production ready internally before we feel like we can go put it out in the wild. So there's certain steps we take along the way and make sure that we're closely listening to customer feedback.
Yeah, Christina, what are you seeing on the customer side? What's the customer response to Vanta AI, or specifically, what are they afraid of and excited about when it comes to AI and their security and compliance workflows?
Yeah, it's generally been very positive, and I think we didn't entirely know what to expect in that, we believed these were more magical product experiences, but also given the domain and the background of folks, how would those net out? I think it's very much, netted out on the magical product experience side. I think on the concerns, there's a lot of like, are you going to train on my data, or like, what are you doing with my data as a broad theme? We were very proactive early about writing down our principles around how we build with AI. And one of the primary and top ones is we will not train on customer data. And so, I see that in our customers. I see that in our customers' customers. We work with a lot of AI companies that are working on, kind of demonstrating their own policies. And this "will you train on my data" kind of comes up a lot. And honestly, I think is often a blocker, especially at the top of the market and especially with European companies. So that's where I think the bulk of the like skepticism or skittishness is.
There's a set of enterprises that are basically like foaming at the mouths when they hear the word AI. So there's a group that say AI, we want to see everything AI. And there's a group that say AI, and I see a lot of companies basically adopting an AI kill switch for a set of enterprise sales. I'm curious if that's something you all have had to do as well.
We have not yet. We've, I think we see enterprises wanting more choice over models in some cases, and I think it's more of a philosophical distinction versus you might tell me XYZ model is better at, code generation or something, but I really want to use this other one. And so we've seen it in that sense, but we've less seen in like, hey, take this all away.
Awesome. And I think I interrupted you. What were you gonna say?
Oh yeah, we technically have the ability to turn off AI if you want to use in Vanta, but like to Christina's point, we rarely see
not
that.
asking for it.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to maybe just like on the magical product experience point. I think what we see folks getting excited about is when we can really customize like instructions or requirements for them and for their setup. And again, in that is sort of magical, and it's like, okay, there's these heuristics and rules and best practices, but again, given everything maybe about you particularly, here is maybe particular instructions about how you might think about changing your infrastructure in a particular way, but it is truly tailored to them, not just like, find and replace variables, but like truly them, those sort of experiences, we've seen like great reception too.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting if you have something that's personalized and useful, and then you trust it, which is the last part. And that's maybe the hard part. Very cool. So I'm actually also curious, when you talk to customers, how are they thinking about their risk assessments with all this AI adoption? So more and more businesses are using AI models in their products. There have been, I think, ISO 42001, some specific risk assessments around AI. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of, again, especially for companies that are either serving, their customers are generally based in Europe, or they serve the very top of the market. So maybe it's global financial institutions, but maybe some like, global conglomerate. And a lot of what we see is, I think the universe is cooling. By that, I mean, the big enterprises have concerns about how their data is used or how these products might work. the software vendors and people building with AI want to satisfy those concerns, but no one quite knows exactly like the magical incantation to say to, either ask for or provide a bunch of certainty. And so in that, we're starting to see some of the standards bodies create new regulations, NIST AI RMF in the US, ISO 42001. And I think more of these will gain traction over time as we just kind of figure out how to talk about some of this stuff. But again, right now we like don't quite have all the words. And so the conversations can be like a little bit longer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. People are still figuring out how to do this too. Okay, so we're brushing up on time, so I'm going to ask you each just one more question. What excites you most about the future of AI at Vanta, and how important is AI to the Vanta story? So I'm cheating. It's a little bit of a two-parter.
I feel like we only scratched the surface of things we can use AI for. Like compliance is really important yet hard, process to do for like a lot of stakeholders. It involves a lot of data, a lot of documents, a lot of stakeholders. I think we are only just scratching the surface of the set of problems we are solving with it. So I'm very excited to how to make security, trust management, and compliance just more accessible to more people with less overhead. So freeing up time to do more important stuff on their plate. I'm very excited about that. Yeah. Was there a second part? Sorry.
It's just how important is it to the Vanta story?
Oh, yeah. So I think it ties into it. I think it's very critical to be able to fulfill this objective. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How about you, Christina?
Similarly, I think just kind of like underscoring everything it just said, I think it's very important. I've said the magical product experience piece several points, but I just deeply believe it. It's folks have thought about, could I personalize, how to fix instructions to this particular company and infrastructure and individual? Like that's not a novel idea, but we could never really build it, and now we can. And I think that is like very cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Great to have you on, Christina and Iccha, and excited to see more from Vanta and Vanta AI.
Thanks, Barr.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.